Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Advent of Code. That's right, it's that time of year again. The time of year for the thing I do that gets the most views out of the whole year. Who knows why I do all this other video game stuff throughout the year? What people really want to do is watch an intermediate Haskell programmer write Haskell for Christmas, but here we are. Every year I tell myself I'm going to use Advent of Code to learn something new, and in some past years I've done that, right? I used it, the very first year I used it as a vehicle to learn Haskell, and I guess it was 2015. And I used it for Python one year. One year I challenged myself to learn to use tmux so that I could just do everything in one console window instead of having 15 windows open. And, for the last few years, I haven't really challenged myself to learn anything new. I just have a fun time, writing some chill Haskell. And then when the problems get hard enough to be frustrating instead of fun, I just check out and stop doing it. The last, at least 4 years, I've told myself, this year I'll learn Rust. Still not doing it, so here we are, doing it in Haskell again. We'll start the problem in a minute, but I figure at least in the first episode of the series, I should do some expectation setting. So, there are a number of, Haskell beginners out there who message me on Discord, and they're like, oh, I'm learning Haskell from your Advent of Code. And I'm like, that's cool. I really appreciate, that you're enjoying it and that you, the feedback is nice. But, I'm not a Haskell expert. Really, I'm not a professional. I pretty much use Haskell for Advent of Code and for tiny little 10-minute problems throughout the rest of the year. It's the language I would most like to get better with, and the one anyway. But so I feel like my audience is Haskell beginners, not people who are completely unfamiliar with the language, because except for the first time I did Haskell, I tried to teach the language while I was doing Advent of Code, and I think that was a pretty silly idea. So instead, I explain what I'm doing, but I don't go into super detail about every little thing. So you are expected to have some Haskell familiarity, but I'm no expert, right? If you're a Haskell expert, I don't know, you're not going to learn a ton from watching this. But if you just want to also, I don't edit this stuff unless I make a mistake, so you are getting full slice of life, what it is actually like to program, which means there's a lot of umming and ahhing and slow progress, but that's life, man. So, I don't know, is there anything else I wanted to say? Oh, you can get the repo on GitHub. It's the same place it always is, github.com/amalloy/aoc-2024. My Haskell development environment is Jank. Not that it's some tool named Jank. It's just I don't know. I've carried around some configuration files for the last 8 years, and they mostly hold together, but they're not good. I would not recommend that a new Haskell user say, oh, I'll use Amalloy's Haskell setup. I'm using Emacs in a window, in a console, which is fine. But I don't have great Emacs integration for Haskell. It's okay. I'm using Stack, which when I started using Haskell, it was because Cabal was stupid. These days Cabal is good, but I tried a month or two ago, and I could not figure out how to use any of this Haskell shit. So I'm still stuck on my old Stack setup. I think I'm using GHC 2021 as my default language. And I kind of wish that actually I were using 2024, but I couldn't figure out how to upgrade Stack or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, let's get started and see what they have in store for problem 1. Day 1. Historian Hysteria. The chief historian is always present for the big Christmas sleigh launch, but nobody has seen him in months. Last anyone heard, he was visiting locations that are historically significant to the North Pole. A group of senior historians has asked you to accompany them as they check the places they think he was most likely to visit. As each location is checked, they'll mark it on their list with a star. They figure the chief historian must be in one of the first 50 places they'll look, so in order to save Christmas, you need to help them get 50 stars on their list before Santa takes off on December 25th. Collect stars by solving puzzles. 2 puzzles will be made available on each day in the Advent calendar. The second puzzle is unlocked when you complete the first. Each puzzle grants 1 star. Good luck. You haven't even left yet, and the group of elvish senior historians has already hit a problem. Their list of locations to check is currently empty. Eventually, someone decides that the best place to check first would be the chief historian's office. Good thinking. Upon pouring into the office, everyone confirms that the chief historian is indeed nowhere to be found. Instead, the elves discover an assortment of notes and lists of historically significant locations. This seems to be the planning the chief historian was doing before he left. Perhaps these notes can be used to determine which locations to search? Throughout the chief's office, the historically significant locations are listed not by name, but by a unique number called the location ID. To make sure they don't miss anything, the historians split into 2 groups, each searching the office and trying to create their own complete list of location IDs. Can I just say it's weird that the T in the historians is capitalized? It's almost like they're a band, right? The historians! Like, if historians were a proper noun, like, what's a proper noun that you can pluralize? I can't think of one. I'm sure they exist. Like the bishops or something. I don't know. You might capitalize the bishop when talking about a Roman Catholic bishop. Like, the bishops. Where are the bishops? They're over there. Like, the bishops, you would capitalize the B, but not the T. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just unusual. Anyway, the historians. Oh, I guess here's an example. The elves, right? Lowercase t. Here, capital T. Very, very interesting. Okay. And it's not an accident. It's being done regularly every time the historian shows up. Anyway, there's just one problem. By holding the 2 lists up side by side, your puzzle input, it quickly becomes clear that the lists aren't very similar. Maybe you can help the historians reconcile their lists? 2 lists. There are 2 lists? Oh, they split into 2 groups. Okay, I thought they split into lots of groups, but okay, 2. Maybe the lists are only off by a small number. To find out, pair up the numbers and measure how far apart they are. Pair up the smallest number in the left list with the smallest number in the right list, the second smallest with the second smallest, and so on. Within each pair, figure out how far apart the 2 numbers are. You'll need to add up all of those distances. Okay, sure. Then there's some examples. Total distance, add up the distances. I'm realizing now that there's one thing I usually have set up when I start Advent of Code that I don't have right now, which is my little script to download my input. I'm not even logged in. Okay, I'm going to go do a little bit more setup, and I'll be right back. I'm back. I'm logged in. And I got my inputs all set up. So obviously, like, you can click the link down here to get your puzzle input, and it's right here. But it's a nuisance to copy and paste that into a text file and make sure you got all the, you didn't accidentally put in a line break that doesn't belong there or something, right? So I have a little script to download my inputs. And they ask you to please not, to not make wasteful download queries of the server, because the server gets pretty busy in December especially. If you are writing your own little script to get your inputs, don't, some people have, they've written libraries that, automatically fetch inputs for you, and, as long as they do local caching, that's totally fine. My way is even more manual than that. I just have this little script. I downloaded my input with Chrome, and I looked at the dev tools and said, please, tell me exactly what message you sent to the server, which importantly includes my cookie. And so now I've imported my cookie into Bash, and I even apparently last year set it up to be so that I wouldn't have to rewrite all this curl stuff. I just had to overwrite the cookie in this file here. And it all works. And I can show you the script without without leaking my cookie because it's in a separate file. So isn't that nice? And we can now look at the input, which I got. Well, okay, we can get it again. Eric can stand me downloading the input file one more time than necessary, I think. So there you go. That's how we download it, and now it's there. And it's just a bunch of sequences of numbers. Or it's two sequences of numbers, importantly, I guess. And we're asked to compare these two things in, smallest to largest, pair them up. Now, what we sort of have here is two lists. It's sort of transposed in an unpleasant way when we're parsing it, because you don't have all the numbers of the first list and then all the numbers of the second list. You have one of each. So you kind of have to read them into a list of pairs and then transpose that into a pair of lists, sort the lists, and then turn them back into a list of pairs so you can pair them off, right? Transpose would work there. So would zip list, which would be kind of funny. But I think just working with transpose is probably fine. Wait, was it traverse or sequence A? Is that actually going to make sense? If you have let's ask GCI, shall we? So this is, an example of me kind of doodling around and maybe exposing beginners to Haskell ideas they may not be familiar with, whether or not they're the most appropriate for this. Who could say? So suppose that we were to, do I have, I don't know what's in, okay, that is in Prelude these days. Fine. So if I said sequence A of a pair of lists, should I get back a list of pairs? I don't know. My guess is yes, but not in a way I would be happy with. Let's see. No, I shouldn't. This should not give me what I want. Yeah, this is nonsense. Great. Now, of course, really, I just want to unzip these, right? So we could say, uncurry unzip of that? No. What's the type of unzip? A list of pairs. Oh yeah, I don't have a pair of lists. I have a list of pairs. So if I had 1, 2, and 3, 4, that's more like what I'd be. Okay, I got confused because they're all the same length, right? So if I had this is what our input might be. And if I then just said to unzip that, we get back a pair of lists. Great. Then with the pair of lists, we would sort each of them and then join them up pairwise, I suppose. Something else that I suppose should be obvious if you haven't figured it out by now is that I do not do this Advent of Code stuff competitively at all. I'm not even starting this recording until 21 hours after the puzzle went up, and I'm not attempting to solve it quickly. Lots of people do that, not everyone. I think one nice thing about Advent of Code is just a source of high-quality, fun puzzles that you can use however you want. And I use it to have fun modeling Haskell problems and trying out interesting ideas in them. So, all right. We're probably ready to start writing some code, right? God, another example. Okay, so like this stuff all at the top, like it's in my templates because I wanted it one year, and like I don't think it's a good idea, but I also don't really want to change my templates, so it's still there. I don't know, whatever. So this is the overall structure I think that I like my Advent of Code puzzles to have. You have a parse, an input processing, a main file, or a main function here, action really, I guess, that is generally the same across days, unless there's, rarely there's some reason that your input isn't in input.txt or something. But I just say, this is such a weird, did I really write the file the function this way? I guess it's fine. I read the input file, which gives back like a string. I know, a professional Haskeller would use text, but here we are, I'm using strings, tough luck. And so then I have prepare, which is basically like my parse function. But I don't like to call it parse because I might want the word parse for something else. That produces an input, which is the same for part 1 and part 2. And then I have part 1 and part 2 as their own separate functions. There's not any compelling reason this must be how you should structure an Advent of Code solution. But I kind of like the idea of it as like, parse the input, that's a separate thing. Part 1 and part 2 shouldn't really rely on each other. They should both do something with the input. And it's a nice little bonus when, like, part 2 is hidden to you, right? You can't see it till you're done with part 1. And it's a nice little bonus when the change to implement part 2 is a small one. Because it tells me that like I did good domain modeling in part 1. That I don't have to drastically change all my types or whatever because of something surprising in part 2. So anyway, what is our input type going to be today? Well, it's going to be a list of pair of int, right? I think that's fair enough. We have 2 ints. Now, I could say my input is a pair of lists of ints. But I'm not altogether sure that part 2 isn't going to trick me with some other way to interpret the 2 columns. They found 2 lists. They found an assortment of notes and lists. I don't know. I'll probably want... Well, no. For all I know, part 2 is not going to involve sorting them. It might want them to actually be in order, right? So I shouldn't have my input processing be read the 2 pairs, the 2 lists, sort each one, and then like join them. It should just be like, give me the list of pairs. And part 1 will be, split them into a pair of lists, sort each list, and then diff them against each other. Part 2 might repeat some of that work and might not, is how I think I would like it to be. So yes, a list of pairs, that is indeed what we are parsing. And here's an example of me doing what I think is not a particularly good idea for a Haskell program necessarily, certainly not an industrial strength one, but one that I think exposes beginners. Well, A, I just kind of have fun doing it, and B, I think it is good for beginners to be exposed to it is, how okay, let's ask this question. You're looking at this file, right? And you're writing some program in Java or Python, or let's be honest, probably Python. How would you parse this into a meaningful data structure? You would want, presumably, a list of pairs, and maybe at some point you would turn that into a pair of lists, but let's say you just want the list of pairs for now. You would probably, I don't know that much about Python. I'm sure there's some function that I don't even know what it's called, that lets you iterate over the lines in the input or something, right? You would iterate over the lines. For each one, you would match a regular expression, and the regular expression would be, it would be something like, percent, no, it's been so long, slash D, you would have to, of course, write R for Python's regexes, which, oh my god, get me in fundamental mode. You'd write R, and do you triple quote or single quote? I don't really know how it works. But this way you don't have to double escape the slashes at least. You'd you would write something like this. And you would take that and then you would say line equals get line or whatever it's called in Python. I don't know. You would say, match. I know the syntax doesn't look like this, but I don't know what it looks like, so forgive me. That's not the point. Match line with this regex. Actually, I guess you would probably say m xy equals match like this, and you would say x equals read. It would be x to int or something like that. Y equals y. I don't know what this stuff is called, but there's some sort of it's just called int, isn't it? Int x, int y, right? You match this silly little regular expression. You extract the parts using the named groups. You post-process the parts, and then you would say input dot append xy or something like that. This is very broadly speaking something you might write in the middle of a loop in Python. And that's fine. But you have this kind of repeated this knowledge about how to process what the input format is not really contained in just a single place. This regex has to know the shape of the input. Here, you have to know the shape of the input. You have to know you're going to get out the match and the two groups. Here, you have to know, okay, the left group is going to be an int, and the second a sequence of digits that I'll treat as an int, and so on. And one of the things that is nice to do in Haskell is that it has support for parser combinator libraries, which obviously are kind of overkill for parsing just two ints on a line. But for something more complicated, they let you write much more composable parsing code using features of the actual host language instead of using regexes, which are this foreign growth on the language. I like regexes as much as the next guy. I, in my time, have been a regex expert in... I don't know. It's dangerous to call yourself an expert on anything, but I think it's fair. And, they have their place, but it's nice to not have to use them. And so I like to... Hello? Am I just stupid? I keep typing the wrong characters? Okay. I like to use text regex applicative for my parsing needs in Haskell for Advent of Code. which is, and what symbols do I even need? I don't remember. Which is a library that parses regular languages using the DFA and NFA. What do you even call that? Like technique, I guess. In a way that embeds nicely into Haskell, and notably, like, I don't know. I could go on about regexes for hours, but like the popular regex libraries in almost every language derived from PCRE don't use the cool theory that made regexes popular to begin with, and they're like woefully inefficient given certain kinds of regexes. I always forget the word for like, constructed to be bad. Like there's a word for it that I can't remember. Not malformed, but like the input is undesirable. Anyway, whereas text regex duplicative actually does the nice theoretical thing and embeds nice, and it just like works with all the Haskell operators you're used to working with. So you don't need a bunch of arcane knowledge about what some regex language and some alternative API for accessing the matches within it. So you'll see that in a minute, although it is, again, sort of overkill for this. What do I need from text regex duplicative? I know I need RE. That's the type for a regex. I need match. I think I need sim and psim. Let's go look at the regex duplicative API. What is in here again? I haven't used it for like a year, so I gotta remember how this stuff works. So you have sim and psim. Do we have like special? Is digits a special thing, or do I have to implement that myself? I don't remember. If we look in the contents, common maybe? Yeah, common. There we go. Decimal. Great. Okay, so I'm going to need sim for spaces, I guess, and for new lines. Not even for new lines. Honestly, maybe I don't even need... You know what? Today we don't even need text regex duplicative after all that. It's just so simple to parse this. We can just use lines and words. Okay, no text regex duplicative today. We can just use lines and words from the prelude. Although, like, what if... I don't know. I generally make an assumption that the input file will be well-formed. I don't try to handle ill-formed input files. So I'll just assume it's well-formed here. So we can actually write prepare right now, I suppose. Prepare is map line, I guess, over lines, where line of S is I want to call words on that, which will give me back a two-element list. Actually, A, B, let's do XY. Read X, read Y. Line of anything else. So we'll say that. we parse the lines, or we split the input into lines. We take each line and split it into words, and then we call the line function on it. The line function expects exactly 2 inputs. And if it gets that, it makes a list or a pair of the results. Otherwise, it prints out what's wrong with the line. So let's start with just like, oh, invalid is a list, of course. Okay, so what happens if I just say main? Am I going to be happy? Oh yeah, I guess part 1 and part 2 are to return nothing. Okay, so let's say this just returns the input. Yeah, looks like that parsed out just fine. We got a list of pairs. Okay, great. So now we can write part 1, yeah? The result of part 1 should be an int. So part 1 of, we have a list of pairs. So we can say part 1 of pairs is some zip with map abs zip with. If I ask GHCI, what is the type of minus? Okay, that's the binary one. I was getting confused because minus has this very special place in Haskell's grammar, or I don't know, type system. I'm not even sure what's special about it. But like in the sense that -6 is an int. But like minus is a binary function, except that in certain circumstances, when you type minus, you actually get a unary function. So like I never quite know what I'm going to get when I use minus. So zip with minus. I have a list of pairs. I want to like sort them both. Oh, I don't know. We'll name this function sort each, where sort each of a list of pairs is it's sort of like I want 2 lists. You probably want to uncurry this, right? I have a list of pairs. I need a pair of lists, first of all, which we know is just unzip, right? Am I even close with that? So type is wrong somewhere. Minus is applied to too few arguments. Sure. I should say we're not uncurrying zip width and applying it to minus. We're applying minus to zip width and then uncurrying that. There are still some errors, but yes, that was wrong. even know where I'm getting with this. If I say what type I want sort each to be, am I going to get a more useful error message? I want sort each to be a function from pair, or from input, which is a list of pairs, to a pair of lists. So there's a hole here, which is fine. I put it there because I'm not done. I just wanted to know what type it was. Why is applied to too few arguments? Oh, sure. Okay, I think it's just saying that I'm not done yet. I wrote this. Yeah, so this is type correct, it just isn't finished. So if I unzip things first, then I need a function that takes a pair of lists and produces another pair of lists, which is simple enough. So actually, I think I should do this. Sort each is, it takes one of these. Oh, sort each is on the wrong side. See, if I had a proper IDE, I wouldn't have to do all this bouncing back and forth between windows, which is why I tell you don't copy my Haskell setup. But here we are. It's good enough. Yes. So now we just want a function from pair of int to pair of int, and that's simple. Sort each of x's, y's is sort x's, sort y's. Sort. Gotta import sort. What century is it? Okay. And I already wrote the rest of part 1, right? It's just right here. Okay. So this should be it. I should be just like run the program and see what the answer is. We're unzipping, we're sorting each of them, we're zipping them together with subtraction, and we're taking the absolute value of each. That is what I'm supposed to do, right? The difference is 2 if it's 1 and 3. Three and 4, 3 and 5. I'm just making sure we're not supposed to like take negative numbers from if like one is bigger than the other. Yeah. 3 and 4, 4 and 3. Oh, but right, this is not okay, so 1. It actually looks like the left list is smaller pretty much all the time, huh? So this example doesn't make it super clear, but I think that's true. How far apart they are, not one minus the other, but just their distance. Okay, well, let's run it. I was reminded in the Discord today that apparently everybody noticed that I get so excited when I get a number, even though my functions always return numbers. I say, oh, it's a number, good news. Which, I mean, yeah, that's kind of the most you can hope for when you don't have any more transparency here, right? It didn't crash. It didn't loop forever. I got back a number. It could be right. You know, the fact that it's a good number is the one bit of good news I get before I enter it into the website. So I'm always happy to see a number. That's the right answer. Great. So we're moving on to part 2. But first, like a good little developer, let's commit. And I like to get add-p so I can look over what I've done, see if there's anything I wanted to leave out. I don't know why. No new line at end of file? Oh, my template is missing a new line. Oh, gross. Okay. Fine. Git commit? No, let's git commit. K1 part 1. Okay. Part 2. Your analysis only confirmed what everyone feared. The two lists of location IDs are indeed very different. Or are they? The historians can't agree on which group made the mistakes or how to read most of the chief's handwriting. But in the commotion, you notice an interesting detail. A lot of location IDs appear in both lists. Maybe the other numbers aren't location IDs at all, but rather misinterpreted handwriting. This time, you'll need to figure out exactly how often each number from the left list appears in the right list. Calculate a total similarity score by adding up each number in the left list after multiplying it by the number of times that number appears in the right list. I see. So we're not necessarily trying to sort them here, although it wouldn't hurt. 3 appears in the right list 3 times, so the similarity goes up. Yeah, next is 4. Okay. So this 3, like each of these 3s kind of counts separately. And they're multiplied by 3 because it appears 3 times on the right. And anything... So there's an example that doesn't appear. The third number in the left list is 2, which doesn't appear, so it's just 0. So actually, you don't necessarily have to do this line by line, right? You could build a frequency list, a bag or whatever, a multiset of each of them. And then just iterate over either one of them. And look up the result in the other list and multiply the counts of each, right? I mean, you don't even really need a multiset. You could just use a map from int to int. Okay, so you could sort them here, but you don't have to. Right, I think all we need from the left list is knowing that 1 appears once, 2 appears once, 3 appears 3 times, and 4 appears once. We don't need to know what order they're in or anything. We'll just get the score for 3, which will be 3 because there's 3 of them over here, and then multiply it by 3 because there's 3 of them here. So, sure. A frequency map of each side. All right, so we're learning a few things. First of all, we do want to split it into 2 actual lists for both halves of the problem. So some of the stuff that was done in part 1 could have been done in part 2. But really only unzip. That's the only part that we need in part 2 as well, right? So I don't feel bad at all about not doing this kind of fiddling with stuff in my prepare. It would have been fine, because part 2 wouldn't mind if they were like sorted and split into lists already. But we can just use unzip. So there's got to be some. I've written it a million times. It's got to exist somewhere. If we had ord a, I wanted a function from list of a to. I'm typing. I don't share my browser windows with you people. I think I do once I actually get to a web page, but when I'm navigating, you don't get to look. The browser just knows too many intimate things about anybody. I would never share that with someone I'm not married to. So if we had ORed A, we had a list of A, and we wanted a map from A to int. Does that exist somewhere? Yeah, it's in some weirdo little package nobody uses. Okay, so we'll just implement it again. It's very simple. In data map strict, we can find the type map. We'll want, what's in data map strict? Wait, did I accidentally go to module? Why is this taking me to the library instead of to the specific? Oh no, it's the right place. Okay. Can I like make this window a little wider? I can, but it still doesn't. There's like you have to zoom way out to get it. I don't know. It doesn't really make a difference. Okay. Back to the large size I always browse at, I guess. Query, is that what I was looking for? Kind of, yeah. Look up with default, or find with default? That's what it's called. So I need find with default. And I need look up. No, I'm using find with default, of course. I need from list with. That's the good one, right? I think those are the only things I need from map. From list with and find with default. Oh, I need elms probably. Or is that what it's called? You get the key and value? What is elms? No, that just returns the values. What is a soaks? So that's to like treat the map as a list of pairs. Okay, so those I think are the three functions and one type we need from data map strict. And let's implement a little function here. Frequencies is a function from ORed A, assuming A is orderable, a list of A to a map from A to int. Freaks is just from list with plus map, no, zip, no. I guess I need to map. Is tuple sections on by default, I wonder? Let's find out. Tuple sections is on by default. Cool. Okay, so I think that works. If I say freaks of... Yeah, it says there are 2 A's, 2 B's, 3 C's, a D, and an S. That looks plausible. So the idea here is we have a list of A's, and first we turn each one into a tuple. This is a tuple section where you only state some of the elements in the tuple, and you get like a function that waits to fill in the rest. So this... Oh, hang on. All right, not sure what happened there. You might have heard like some little static or something for a minute there. Somehow my headphones turned off and the music I'm listening to started playing over the speakers. I don't know how that happened in the middle of a sentence. Maybe I have to go back and edit it. We'll see if YouTube flags anything. This is the, 50-minute mark? Okay. So a tuple section. So this is equivalent to a function like f of x is x1, right? So this is just the function I've written here as the tuple section. So we're going to take each list element and turn it into a tuple containing that element and 1. And then we're going to call maps from list with function, which takes a list of key value pairs and builds a map of them. But if there's ever a collision where you get the same key listed twice, it calls the function you supply on the values to reconcile the two. And so here we just want to add up the number of times it was there before. So if we have 5 copies of like 3, 1, or of a, 1 for the string example, then we'll be adding 1 and 1 5 times, and the result will be a, 5, and that's what goes in the map. So part 2 is like part 2 of, I guess I do unzip to get back to the pair of lists instead of list of pairs. So we'll turn each one into a frequency map and then collate, I guess, where freaks each x's, y's is, you know, let's define a little each function here, I guess. Each f of a, b is just f a, f b. I'm sure this exists somewhere, like it's kind of bimap ff, for example, but I don't want to get like bifunctors involved. I'm sure there's a better version of it. And it looks a little bit like fmap if we assumed that we had a functor here, but I don't. I have a pair of ints. I could have a pair of a's, but like, come on, get real. I'm not going to do that. So each takes a function from a to b and a pair of a's and produces a pair of b's. So then we can say, instead of sort each, we could say each sort, and then I don't need any of this, right? And this can be each freaks. And then we will need a collate. You know, let's move freaks in here. We'll get rid of the type. It was just there for... I mean, it's typical in Haskell to put types on your top-level functions, and for inner functions, you kind of can or cannot, but people usually don't. It was there to explain to you what the type was, but it's such a simple function, it doesn't really need a type annotation. So collate of x's, y's is... Am I supposed to add these together, I assume? What was I supposed to do with the results? Get a similarity score. Okay, so add them all up. Sum map score of a soaks of x's, where, again, I guess... Actually, yeah, this should be an inner where score of, I have a soak, so the left side will be an ID, I guess we'll call x, and n is n times find with default of 0. Oh, what order does find with default take its arguments? It takes the default, then the key, then the map. Okay, find with default 0, x, y's, right? Does that seem about right? It seems okay to me. So we get all the Ahsoks of X's, one of the lists, it doesn't really matter which one. And for each time it appears, we multiply by the number of times that value appears on the right. If it doesn't appear on the right, we're multiplying by 0, so nothing happens. And if it doesn't appear on the left, we're not even looking up that value, so nothing happens. So I think that makes sense. Does this compile at all? No, of course not. Maps applied to too many arguments. Map. Okay, yeah, that's true. Oh no, so many type errors. Oh, whoops, this should say BB. There we go. Oh, and I never even use maps. How nice. They're just implied. Okay, sure. Name? 392. It's much lower than the first one. But that makes sense because we don't care about the magnitude of the numbers anymore. We just care about how often they appear. And if we look at the input, like, there's only 1,000 of each. The highest score you could possibly get would be 1,000,000, but presumably it's much lower. So I guess all in all, I would say this 392 is a plausible result. Let's put that in. Too low. Okay, that's fair. Let's think about what went wrong. Oh, do I have... Okay, what's the formula I'm supposed to actually be using here for similarity score? Take 3 and multiply it. Okay, so we actually... Okay, yeah, the number should be much larger. So this isn't supposed to be 9. Like, the total of the 3's here isn't just, like, 9. It appears here 3 times and here 3 times. It's 27 because it appears here 3 times and here 3 times, and the number itself is 3. Yeah. Okay. So I should actually say x times n times the default. Now we get a much larger number. Is this one right? I don't know. Did I copy it correctly? Yes. That's better. Okay. Yes, I just didn't think carefully enough about what I was supposed to be implementing. So there you go. We have a thing on the advent calendar, and there'll be another video tomorrow. As always with these, I do not promise to get all the way through. I haven't finished advent of code in several years. At some point, it just gets too grindy for me. But as long as I'm having fun, I like to share what I'm up to. And it is the time of the year during which I get the most views and the most positive comments, so I do appreciate both. Hope you guys enjoyed. I guess I shouldn't do the outro just yet, because we haven't done the most important thing. Commit. Day 1, part 2. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.